periods. Let's talk about it, okay? And so that's what virgin actually means.
Sisters gotta stick together.
What do I always say? Listen to your pussy. She never lies. Sister Strain here, your favorite feisty feminist filmmaking duo. You're listening to The Sister Strain.
Okay, so we are here today with a special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
What a pleasure, guys. My name is Ann Pirvu, and I'm an actress and a filmmaker, and delighted to be in your presence today.
Oh,
Truly grateful.
The delight is all ours.
This is our first travel show. We are on location in Hamilton today.
And how do you describe this room that we're in?
Groundbreakers. This is our movie theater room. This is kind of like you can't see it on this end, but there is movie memorabilia everywhere. And my husband is a huge fan of physical media, so we've got a lot of DVDs, a lot.
So we are in good company today.
Yeah, to
So
talk
the
about
space and the lady sitting in between us. We're lucky. And we want to talk about women in comedy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience in comedy.
Oh, my gosh.
What you have going on right now, a couple things.
I love that.
Yes.
My love for comedy started very early in my life. My family and I immigrated from Canada. From Romania to Canada. There it is. When I was 12 years old, cosmic jokes happening as we speak. And I actually learned how to speak English from cartoons. From Cartoon Network, from, The Simpsons, The Flintstones. So, I always had a flair for the dramatics. But then when I fell in love with filmmaking and I started watching movies like Dumb and Dumber and, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you, just true classics.
Yeah.
Wedding Crashers is one of my favorite. I think the freedom and the self-expression, the ability, the range of self-expression within comedy is very special. It's a very liberating and inspiring vibe, to use a modern word. So I just love it, and I'm grateful to consider myself a female in the comedy genre. I've worked with Tom Green over the years on a comedy called Total Frat Movie. I have done other comedy projects in the past, but the one I'm most proud of, and I think has been most liberating for me, is a TV series called Polly is the New Monogamy, currently available on Hollywood Suite. So
yes.
If you want to check out Anne's work, modern day work, you can find that show.
And the exciting thing about this show is that it's written by a woman.
Absolutely.
As well, created by a woman. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this show that is very female forward, very females in comedy?
Absolutely. I fell in love with the script as soon as I read it because you see the potential for a lot of different representation, a lot of different voices, a lot of different scenarios of what modern day relationships look like. It's very raw, very sex positive. It's called Poly is the New Monogamy, but the first question that people ask does it explore polyamory? And it does not. It touches on the potential for polyamory, but it's not what the show is about. The concept, which was about 7 years in the making when the beautiful Cat Hostick decided to come up with this idea and just put it on paper and make it real, was having more than one. You know how you're just we were chatting about our, experiences in Los Angeles and beyond, and
dating,
dating, in your 20s, dating in your 20s,
sharing war stories.
Yeah.
It's
from
a
the front
landscape that needs to be
From
navigated.
the front lines of Los Angeles. It's a special beast.
A very strange, bizarre place to be.
Yes, some would say topsy-turvy land sometimes. And there are lessons that you sort of take away from that. And if you can put it in your art, which is what I think that Kat ended up doing, the show is about three main lovely young ladies that are dealing with very different modern day relationships and have chosen to have more than one to juggle. So my character specifically, I would let you watch the show to see what other avenues get explored. My character specifically is a business lady, and she, with an open heart and an open mind and a lot of acceptance, decides to turn sugar babying into a business. And in the service of her long-term love and relationship, who is trying to, make it in New York City. They want to have a little house. They want to be taken care of. Everything's very expensive. So in her innocent mind, if there is a way for me to make money and, not hurt anybody in the process, other people are doing it. Why wouldn't I? And be open and honest about it, but not to her long-term partner, which has hilarious results when he figures it out. Yeah. So it's about growing and learning. It's about not judging. For me, being a serial monogamist my entire life, it was an amazing challenge to take on because I think comedy comes out and thrives in opposites. So because she was so opposite of me, she was fascinating to me. Yeah. Instantly, I wanted to be like,
it allows you the potential to not play it one-dimensional or one-sided, right? Because no human being, I had this conversation recently. We were having a very serious interview with someone, and he said, I'm kind of a goofball. I might mess it up from saying a joke. And I said, number one rule in theater school, find the humor. Right? Because as human beings, we're never just one thing. We're such a multitude of feelings and expressions and experiences. So comedy, when you're playing a character, right, it's almost a benefit.
But I think one of the things, and we'll talk a little more about it too, but women in the film industry being actresses, and there's always a certain impression or performance you have to put on. You have to look kind of wrapped up in a certain package in order to be given
traditional
these
expectations,
roles, right?
For sure.
Yes, and so comedy, when you're working in comedy, it kind of gives you permission to step outside those parameters. It gives you permission to be less attractive in this moment or less worried.
And actually, in the first episode of the series, which we watched together, me and Krissa, and had some great laughs, that's sort of broached in the topic of these women coming together and talking about their different relationship dynamics they find themselves in. And there was, and I'm misquoting here, but something along the lines of, well, if men can be a little more crude and break the barriers and break the rules, why the heck can't women, right?
Totally.
And I think this show's a great example, too, of something that we don't get to see often, which is the work that all of us do beyond this comedy project that you're working on now, is that working to get more voices out into the mainstream media. Yes. And a big thing that we don't get to see is projects that are written by women, star women, that the majority of the people on screen are women. And we're seeing the female perspective, especially when it comes to sex and sexuality. We don't always get to see the female perspective.
Yeah. Or even when we are
even when we are seeing female characters portrayed, when they're written by men, sometimes I think some of our personal experience, the things that we find funny, maybe aren't as represented. I was looking at a study that was studying more youth in the comedic shows that they tend to be drawn to, right? And it was very clearly defined as we tend to look for what is representative of ourselves, right?
Makes sense.
So,
in terms of human nature.
Yes, absolutely. So young men might look for more shows where there's more young men present. Same with young women. Or if you're a certain cultural identity or race or religion, whatever it is that you identify with, you gravitate towards shows that represent your experience. Totally. So it sort of makes sense that it's great to see more female comedic characters, but even better than that, it's great to see more female writers because they maybe have a little more similarities in our own personal experiences. So when we're watching those characters, we can really feel, that's me. I've lived that. I've experienced that. Oh, I get why that's so funny because it represents my personal.
And it's also the reason it can't just be the women on screen or, minority voices on screen. They have to be in the writing sphere as well, because we can't have people without the lived experience being the ones writing those characters that they couldn't possibly really understand. And oftentimes I think aren't writing for the best, for the most honest intentions. They're writing it to hit quotas and checkbox in order to get funding or in order to be I'm being,
that's always a challenge.
I'm being diverse. And it's but you shouldn't be right. It's not your place to share those voices. The people with the lived experience should be the ones getting the jobs to do the writing, to share those voices.
And
please.
Well, I was going to say, as a woman who's done a multitude of comedic roles, this project being special to you as created by females, written by females, mostly performed in a group of females, was that a little extra special to you to feel that?
It honestly was. And I'll be honest, there's a trust. And what I was going to say initially is that what I loved most about this script is I'm the comedic relief. So there's three main storylines. Mine was ridiculous. When you watch what happens to me, I embraced it in the most juvenile, innocently naive, and open-minded way, because like there's a lot of like nerve things, poop things, like all kinds of like base level
Anything
comedy
goes.
that I wanted to elevate.
Yeah.
Anything goes. You talk about very honest things, and as in a friendship with women and men, right? Like if you have the courage to open up in certain ways, that's what the show is about: courage and openness, and not going too far. But the other storylines, like Marianne, my friend Mariana Funk's character, Ava, goes through a journey of being in a long-term relationship and seeking sex therapy because she does not feel attracted to or connected to her partner who has a much higher sex drive. There's a discussion of what's that difference between males and females in a relationship? Can there be a difference in sex drive? Which is yes, and also how do you navigate that? Mm-hmm. And more importantly, caring enough about a relationship to fight for it by taking those steps to go to therapy, which I'm a huge proponent of, whether it's sex therapy or any kind of therapy, just to get, an expert opinion and an expert ear on the experiences that you're going through. Everybody needs help to sort things out.
And our
in their
society
life,
has shamed sex and conversations about sex
from the beginning.
So much, especially for women. Let's be
and
honest
that's the
about
beauty
that.
of comedy is that you can broach those very important and more severe or
serious
topics.
Yes.
That was
but
one
adding
of the
that
things,
comic relief
and that was
and
one
making
of
it more digestible.
the points I was going to bring up of when we talk about modern day women in comedy, and there's been a lot of growth in that area. It hasn't always been an area of men aren't going to find things that women talk about funny, kind of vain. But also when you look back to where did comedy start? Because it wasn't always, it didn't always come from a place of just artistic and creative expression and out for laughs. You go back to the courts, royal courts, and there was the jester, and it was used as more of a political sphere of you could gauge modern society. You could gauge the temperature on certain topics. You could use it as a way to bring up political
pushing buttons,
and that one person, that fool, could get away with it in a way that no one else could kind of say those things. So that's where it originally started, was more of a political and a testing of the times, a testing of the culture and influence. Yeah. So as we go through time, in our patriarchal society, why do we not want women to be standing up in positions of comedy? Because then they're going to bring up problems with the patriarchy, and we can't have that.
And potentially we might laugh about it and make us think.
And then be like, wait, maybe there is something wrong here. Maybe there's something here.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And you know what? I have to show you something, because in the spirit of this exact conversation, I want to show you a comic book that my husband and I are developing. It's going to be a graphic novel, but this is a special edition of the first 2 issues. Now, you might notice it's called Dr. Awesome Woman. And it is a journey about a healer. We shorten it sometimes and call her Daw. Now, we got a lot of questions about the title, right? Because it's not it's not like Dr. Awesome or Dr. whatever. But the message that we are trying to make accessible and palatable to a wide range of audience through the beauty of comics, is female-centric. Mm-hmm. And it's about girl power, and it's about struggling with what it means to be a hero, and finding your place in the universe. These are universal issues that as human beings, it's part of the human experience. Everybody goes through it. Yeah. But to make it to make a meaningful topic approachable and palatable and very clearly female-centric, we decided, and it was a conscious choice, to call her Dr. Awesome Woman, the healer. She's a super being with a healing ability.
As we are.
Yes, as all women
Back to source.
Yes.
Back to Mother Nature.
And look, and honestly, that was, I want to see more of stuff like this. And I know that I put my energy and our hearts in it, but I think art is such a powerful vehicle towards changing the world in a
art and comedy specifically. I think it makes topics that are otherwise not as digestible or taboo. It makes them more palatable.
Specific genre films, right?
Oh, Finally.
Yes.
It's coming out May 20th, guys. We're so proud of it. But I'm so excited that I'm sitting amongst such powerful ladies and being able to show you this, because this project has been 2 years in the making.
Yeah.
And somehow,
It's our first time seeing it in the flesh, and it's very exciting. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And somehow, next week we get to unleash it onto the world. It's just wonderful to, in a serendipitous way, to have such a focused, meaningful conversation and have something of note to contribute to. So.
And a big thing I love about doing it with your husband also is like something that Kat and I really stand for, of making change in our society. There has to be male allyship. It can't be women just fighting. It's not just a women's job to be fighting for, because I feel like when women are doing it, they're not just fighting for women, they're fighting for a lot of minority voices and underrepresented voices, because we felt the lack. We see it for everyone. And it's important for men to be using their voices to amplify women's voices.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's so important to Chris, too, just so you guys know. Yes. He is the first. He's a producer and a filmmaker and a very just caring human being. Yeah. Truly, I'm not just biased. I know I'm biased. But I want, sometimes I tell him, I don't know, he's a better human than I am. He is so thoughtful about everybody. And, when we're on set, he'll have genderless washrooms, and he fights for things that are, for everybody to be identified and respected, and has meetings upon meetings upon meetings to make sure that if anyone in any department has a concern, things are dealt with. I am so impressed by that attitude, and I truly believe
he's a rare case.
I do agree with
especially in
that.
the industry. Yes. We need more of him.
Yes.
We need more of him.
And that's why I want, it's funny because we need to have conversations like this, because the concept of allyship is really important. You say, yes, we need allies, da-da-da-da, but it's like, it takes a lot to be an ally. What does that even mean? What does that even look like?
Well, it takes action too, right?
And
anyone can say,
I'm
an ally,
exactly.
but make it actionable.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I know me and Chris would like to do our research about different
stats
topics.
So,
we went on the computer.
Your best bet, we got some.
And so I just stumbled upon this fact. I was reading an article about SNL, obviously a pivotal for the world of comedy, that show, the creation and the journey of different women who have been involved in that show over the years. And I found one detail that really excited me when it comes to allyship. So this was saying in 2014, Leslie Jones and Sashir Zamata joined the cast after Kenan Thompson announced he would no longer perform in drag until SNL hired 2 Black female cast members. And I thought, that's amazing. If he is performing in drag that much, that means you're writing
a lot
female
of
Black characters, so they should be
You think
presented.
it's important to have Black female characters involved in your sketch, so hire, like we were talking about, hire the writers who have the lived experience, who have the voices. Why would you not want the best for your project, the most authentic and honest portrayal? Go to the people who have lived it, who are living it. I don't understand why that's not a full thing.
If you are in a position of influence and power and you have that capability, then yes, it is really important. See something, say something, or make that stand, right? Because I think a lot of people get scared about their own job security or losing, what it could mean for them.
I think you just nailed it.
And that's so brave and bold for him to say, you know what, let's come to a place, I'm playing a female or a male in drag so often. That means there's a lot of topics you want to discuss here about the Black female experience, and that should absolutely be represented by Black females. So
and
let's
he did
bring
it because
them in.
it's the right thing to do,
Yes.
right? Sometimes you fight for others because you feel strongly about something, and sometimes you just fight for justice. And either are just fine, right?
Yeah.
In terms of allyship, right? Some people may feel stronger about certain causes than others, but some people, I think there's something to be said about just doing the right thing, period. And talking about the importance of that and leading by example. And, I'm a huge proponent of I meet you where you're at. You don't have to change your ideas and, we don't have to be alike in any way. But we need to respect human nature. We need to respect human life. And the choice and the ability to identify human life in the way that person chooses to identify, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that freedom and that ability is unparalleled, and it's so valuable, and we should protect it. And on that note, I'm curious what you guys think, because I fear in our little beautiful creative bubble, we are aligned in that idea and that respect.
Oh, you don't always see it out in
I'm seeing
lived
scary
world.
Things happening out into the world right now. Regressions, as it be.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your take is on how we not move backwards, and how we fight that.
I think that's why we have this podcast
in the
and
first
we're doing
place.
the projects that we do is because we're not talking about these things, and the more we don't talk about them, the more we all can keep going on pretending it doesn't affect us and it doesn't matter. But the conversations have to be out there. They have to be easily digestible, easily accessible,
and it's also
and we have to hear them coming frequently.
It's also acknowledging in terms of allyship. And it's like it's enough to say that word, but how do you actually put that into active tangible efforts? And it's like start by noting the fact that the mainstream media, the books we're taught in school, what we're seeing mostly in films and television, it's a one limited perspective that's been on for a long time. It is very male centric,
and so we're all taking that as
white,
the normal.
Cis. So we have to acknowledge, be like, oh wow, that's a thing. Light bulb goes off. What do I do to change that? I look for literature of voices that are completely different than that perspective.
I start consuming different types of projects that represent
films
other perspectives.
Written by a woman, someone from the who has a different sexual orientation than I, someone who's from a different cultural background. Like there's work involved. You have to actively do the work
and seek it out.
Seek it out, because it won't just come to you. The algorithms are programmed to not just come to you.
Those voices are out there. The work is out there. It's all available to us. We just don't always go sourcing it because we're very easily and accessibly fed a certain type of perspective that comes very easily because it's been given precedence for so long, right? So you have to actually do the work. You have to say to yourself, I'm going to stop consuming what I usually consume, and I'm going to actively source different types of voices and experiences.
And I think something that's come up a lot in the work that we're doing right now, especially in the documentary world, we're meeting so many people, and so many people who are vastly different than us, and they're inviting us into their stories, and they're sharing with us. And the thing that we all keep coming back to, I'm like, well, how do we make change? How do we move forward? It's how do we inspire people to be more curious, to face their fears, to step outside of their bubbles, and to be curious enough to be like, oh, well, how do I find these other voices? Where do I go? Dig. Look for them. Actively source them. Like, how do we encourage as a society more people to be more curious to that? And I think when we wrap it back into the topic that we're here, more women in comedy, more marginalized, underrepresented voices in comedy, how do we get the people on the top with the money to also be curious, to know what else is out there, what other perspectives they can get, what other stories could be told? And honestly, and one of your facts is like, does it hinder the money they're bringing in? Does it do the project? Does it bring down the quality of the job? No, the facts do not support that.
I did do a little research. There's an article, IMDb did a study of the top 100 comedy shows, right? To take a look at the stats and facts of how much of these shows are being written by what gender, right? And how are the scales even? What's going on? I think it was following the concept of like, well, are women just not as funny as men, or can they just not write? Do they not get comedy?
Yeah, I have some facts to add back into that after you're done. Well, I'll take
So first of all, we should say that on average of these top 100 shows, IMDb did the study, 81% of writing credits are contributed to males. So 23 out of the 100 shows analyzed attributed 95% or more of their writing credits to males. Wow. Yeah. So, and this to go a little further, 52% of episodes analyzed from the top comedy shows were written without a single female writer.
Which is wild. Like, not even one.
Yeah, but less than 1% of shows. Sorry, what was that? Fewer than 1% of shows were written without at least one male on staff. So that shows even shows that are written more dominantly by females, there's still male representation
at the table.
But it's very, very often that there are writers' rooms where it's only males in total and no female representation. And so this is a prime example of...
See, I'm thinking of like, I am friends with a lot of the Winona Earp cast, for example. You know that show?
Yeah,
and
we were in it.
Yeah. We were man-eating demons at the time.
In our typical vein.
Terrific!
You got black hair and tits. You're man-eating demons.
I did love that role. It was fun and funny.
It was fun to play. Created by the wonderful...
That's our trope.
Emily Andress, right? And I think of that as a success story, and again, not being too close to the process and how it all went, but I think of that as amazing, because I see that show being tremendously successful, and having had a longevity of, that some people only dream of,
And I think it's got a wide male audience too, so it's like, can women make shows that are appeasing to men? Yes, they can.
Well, this is the thing, right? Yeah. And the stats show when you have a more gender diverse cast, and the stats show like any the highest rated shows were ones where there was not more than 60% of either gender represented in the writer's room. Why? Because you're appealing to a wider variety of viewership. We all want to see ourselves
You're fitting
represented.
the population. The population is 50-50 in terms of gender. Why would the people contributing to the product that's supposed to appease as many people as possible, why would that also not be 50-50?
Yes, beneficial. Yeah.
And there was one example that was specifically stood out to me. So the Adult Swim show Rick and Morty, which I have not watched, but apparently it's pretty
I watched
crude.
it.
It was a little outrageous, right?
I watched some.
And so I guess at some point,
brother's obsessed.
During COVID, I think I dug into it.
the guy who runs the studio, I think it's like Mike Lasada or something, was asked why there's not female representation on the staff. And I think his response was, well, I think like females just aren't often as drawn to like conflict. And the show is, very sort of aggressive and conflictual. So it just doesn't seem fitting, right?
Fascinating. Yeah.
But between season 2 and season 3, they decided to hire 4 female writers.
Oh.
To make it gender balanced, all right.
Fantastic.
And of course, a lot of people fans had a lot to say about what would they call the social justice warrior writers, that they would probably ruin the show. So what did happen for season 3?
What do you think
After
happened?
these gender
Did
balance?
was it good? Did it go bad?
Oh,
Did it fall into our fears?
Was it completely soiled for everybody? No, it had the highest ratings it had ever seen in the history of the show. Why? Because specifically, the writers attested to, because there was female writers in the room, the 2 female characters, which previously didn't really add a lot to the plot, they weren't very interesting, became more pivotal to the story. They added to the story.
Yes.
So anyone watching, seeing themselves in those female characters, was more drawn to watch the show.
Yeah, resonated with it, which I think is amazing. I'm fascinated by your question at the beginning about the industry. And I was taught in general, when you talk about acting, any scene, and this is going to sound very crude, but like based on human nature, and you can get into like, teaching techniques about how to break down a script and all this stuff. You can get very detailed. But 2 things you need to always look for. Where's the love? Where's the humor? Right? Yeah. And any good dramatic acting, there's always got to be like a point of levity. Like, where's the air? Where do you let the air out of the balloon, right?
Yeah.
Because that's human nature. We're in
you can't
moments.
just be traumatically going through something and have no levity, because there's always going to be, when people are watching, right, as an audience member, you're going to feel the lack of like, oh, this is heavy. Like, there's always got to be that balance. So I've never forgotten that on a very basic level. And so this is why I think that comedy is so powerful. I think comedy is traditionally underrated in terms of power. Like, I come from a perspective of TV and film, mother, teacher, secret lover. Like the Homer Simpson way, right? Like, it honestly taught me so much.
What is she talking about? We weren't allowed to watch TV growing up. What did we miss out on?
Yeah. Really?
No, we could watch Full House. Family Matters.
Really?
That's comedy, but it's a little more wholesome.
More sitcom-y.
We had to find our bad edge in our 20s,
I love that. It's so funny because I'm telling you, I'm a weird little chameleon, because I learned how to speak English from cartoons and films, and TV has always been a palpable window into the world out there for me. So when we moved across continents, I wasn't as scared, because I knew I was embracing, a new reality.
It shows the social atmosphere of the place you're going to by watching the content that's created. I'm like, okay, so these are
so powerful, though, right?
Yeah.
And
it's so interesting too that like you learned from that, like you learned the language.
It was a teacher to me, honestly.
Through that, so obviously you have a kinship or like why wouldn't I relate to this? And it means so much.
I sincerely have reverence for filmmaking, for the medium, for any kind of self-expression in this way, because I know how powerful it can be when you layer it with messaging, right? My husband and I, who's a film nerd, talk about all the time about like, shows like Twin Peaks or whatever that were groundbreaking, but that actually showcase quite a bit of diversity under the guise of like, in general, like horror, just like you said at the beginning of our conversation here, thrillers or horrors or like,
genres,
comic books make things palatable in ways that, or the messaging becomes more digestible if you look for it. And that's why when we say it's, anybody can take something away from it, those are the most powerful types of projects that last longer. But the question is, with comedy, honestly, what is it about it that makes it hard to make a living, which is true. I think about when I first started, right? And even just being a performer, a female actor in the acting world.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like, it's a hard journey, you know? And it's hard for everybody. It's hard for the guys. It messes you up sometimes emotionally because there is no roadmap.
No.
Like, you don't know how you're going to make it. Or if you're going to make
pursuit.
it. Thankless. It's unending.
You're getting nose constantly. You have to pick yourself back up. You're being told you're not thin enough. Your eyes aren't brown enough. Like, all the things.
Your nose is
anything
too big.
they could possibly say.
You know, and I think I used to get upset about that until I became a writer, and I'm like, okay, sometimes they just have a very clear image in their mind of what this character looks like when they wrote it, right?
But isn't that fascinating? Because I think so. What happens is the reason why there aren't as many female, like you were saying, because I am actually wondering, like, what? Like, because I surround myself, and I actively do this. My friends, we all come up together, right? So creating things on our own and making sure that, you know, you just help each other out. If you hear something or someone's looking for someone with that skill set, like, immediately just set it up, you know? If you can just make an introduction, why not? But, like, I think the problem comes from, traditionally, it being a male-dominated field, for sure, filmmaking, you know?
Yeah.
The guys started it up, so that is a logistical part of history that I think we have to consistently work at unraveling if we want to find our place in there.
Yeah. Well, I think why it's difficult for women to come up in this is because under the patriarchy and societal standards of what is feminine or how a feminine should look or behave or act, comedy is sort of, you know, you think about the comedians today that are successful, like an Amy Schumer type, right?
Yes.
Like she breaks the barriers of what
McCarthy.
Is feminine because a little more raunchy, a little more crude,
well,
and men can feel like, oh, I can relate to that. But then she's like, they're seen as very masculine figures.
Yes.
So for women who don't display themselves as more masculine or they are feminine, there's certain standards of what we expect to receive from them.
I read a woman who wrote this article, and I've got a bunch of points from it. But there was a 2007 Vanity Fair article that was titled "Why Women Aren't Funny." And the main premise of it, was because, and this goes back to,
I'm sure it's better than it sounds.
No, but the premise of it was because what do we want in a woman? Appeal. Sexual, physical appeal. Fuckability, as we said earlier.
Okay.
So we're not looking, or men aren't looking for women to have wit, personality, or character. They want them to appease the image.
They want them
that
to
they
be
see
soft and
grace and and
demure.
beauty.
I'd love to go into a little bit of the woman who spoke about that article. She works in the field of stand-up comedy, which is, have you ever done stand-up comedy?
It terrifies me. That is actually the one thing that I haven't tried. I'm not close
I
enough
think
to
we're
it,
all more physical comedy people.
physical
That
comedy
being
for
said,
sure.
we did do a little bit of stand-up comedy in Los Angeles.
So it was
less stand-up, though.
Yeah,
more.
this is our experience with comedy. We've never been hired for comedy. It just hasn't been in our vein.
We would never.
But we've always
never
been,
give us an audition for that. We got tits. What?
Yeah, what? We've been writing it and creating our own short films and web content, right? So when we went to LA, we're like, we sort of get to recreate ourselves, right?
Sure.
And as Canadians on an O1 visa, there's not a lot of opportunity for
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
unless you're being hired, and no one really knows you when you're first going. So we were like, okay, we're going to finally do our sketch comedy characters. We've been writing them. We got, we have scripts, and maybe we'll try burlesque because I love how, like,
there seems to be a lot of burlesque there.
It's our renaissance.
Money doing that, a lot of, because it's everywhere there, right? So you're like, this seems like the best option for us to be able to make money. There seems like a lot of avenues
and
to
make
do
money
it.
as a performer. How amazing would
And
that
also,
be? And we
like,
get to start again.
We've already been doing that on TV.
Might as well.
And you're kind of like, this is pretty daring. I've never done it before.
We found out we were getting hired for a fair amount of burlesque, and it was fun, and it was really liberating. It was a great experience. And then we had a friend connect us with a woman who was doing an all-female review show at the Virgil, and he was like, yeah, I told her about your burlesque. She's really interested. And we were like, this is our opportunity. So we wrote to her and we said, I know you want burlesque from us, but we really actually prefer comedy. And if there was a way that we could combine burlesque with our comedy characters, can we? And she was like, you can try it out. You can try it out. And we're
So
like,
they were receptive. That's good.
She was, well, because it was an all-female review. She was like, okay. And they did comedy, they did burlesque, they did all kind of, and singers, like music. So she's like, it doesn't not suit the lineup, so let's go for it.
It was a moment of being like, okay, they seem to be liking our tits. Great. You know what? You can see my tits, but first you're going to listen to my goddamn jokes, okay? Yeah. So we tried it out, and it went so well that she hired us in residency after that to do this. And we always found interesting and funny ways to like incorporate, and it's not like the sort of raunch. It's more like comedy character burlesque, right? Of like
1920s, 1930s, silly, and
right?
you're dressed in like an old lady character with,
But it does sort of reiterate the trope of like, even when you're trying to do comedy, like the audience still wants to see some level of sexuality or fuckability.
So can I ask you, because this is interesting, was your intention to do that and to pursue burlesque intentional, or did you sort of gravitate towards what you thought the audience wanted?
Both were actually intentional. We were moving to a new country, and we thought, you know what, when I think about wanting to be in comedy or be taken seriously, we're also poets and writers. Yeah. I want to be celebrated for that side, but I also love the liberation as a woman to be able to like be really expressive with my body. And I always wanted to try burlesque. Yeah. We looked for sources in Toronto and didn't find it. And we were like, okay, if we're moving to a new country, we get to start again. What are two things that are important to us? I want to finally test ourselves to do our comedy characters, and I want to try burlesque.
Yeah. Isn't this amazing? And to everybody out there, I just want a PSA moment. Any up-and-coming actor that's considering going to LA, right? Mm-hmm. Be very deliberate, like you just said. Yeah. Have intentions with specificity and what you're willing and not willing to do, because I've seen so many of my
there was
friends,
so many jobs that came up, and we were like, I'm sorry, I need you to precisely tell me what it is you expect me to do here. Yeah. And as soon as you dug a little deeper, you're like, yeah, no, that's not a professional job. I'm not. Or but it's not a professional job I'm wanting to get involved in.
Or even just like when you're young and as an artist, you're even beyond, the horror stories or the warnings. It's more so like figuring out who you are, right? So do kind of have an idea of like,
we lost a camera.
We lost it. Should we?
Yeah.
Take a beat?
Yeah.
Okay. We had a camera overheat. We're bringing so much energy to the table right now. Dreamy over here. But we're recharged and we're back. Oops. We're back. We're better than ever.
We're back.
Pulling cords out, causing chaos.
Jumping back into the topic of discussion, we were sort of approaching on the importance of knowing yourself as an artist. Most importantly, so that you can find other like-minded artists to create with, to fuel that passion
100%.
And to feel supported.
And I remember when I first started acting, and when you're passionate and you discover like, oh, this is something I want to do, and you come into the industry, which is very vast, there's no roadmap, no one has a clear way through. And you're hit with that and you're young and you think, I can do anything, right? Like, I will do anything. Horseback riding, I can sing, I can dance,
all the sports, on my feet. All the skills.
Whatever you want, I can do it. And then you're in it long enough and you realize, like, you can't do it all. You shouldn't do it all.
Also, I don't want to do it all.
No.
Yeah. I don't want to. You know what? Rollerblading and me tried it. It's not going to work out. I don't want the part as the rollerblade girl. It's not going to be a thing for me.
And have to do that.
I also, even like a non-skill. I decided a couple years ago. I said to my agent, if it requires being in a bikini, don't submit me. It ain't going to happen. It's just not me anymore.
We're not. What I could pass off in my 20s, like I'm not the bikini girl anymore.
And I don't want to be.
If you change your mind later down the line, there's always that door open. But like the point is, you have choice. As a performer, you are the authority. And when you want something so badly, and as an actor, you're auditioning for everything, so nothing's given to you, right? Unless you make your own projects.
Yes.
But where you're no longer a question mark, where you're just doing it. And I think that there's something that happens to actors psychologically because they're constantly pitching themselves and auditioning for things where it's easy to lose sight of the fact that you're a human being separate from the thing that you do, which is the job, right? Yeah. Separate from the art that already has you be so malleable and like, and all of these skills and all of, you have to be so flexible as an actor, right? And so accessible and so open. But that has to be separate and different from who you are as the human who's not a product, who has a life, who has value beyond, above and beyond anything that you put out there into the world for your art, right? Yeah. Yeah. If you don't have that separation, and that's why what I tell to all my young little students is like, you have choice, you're amazing just the way you are, and now we're talking about strategies for your acting, right? Yes. Separate things.
Yeah.
And knowing that, I wish someone would have taught me that when I was 12 and wanting to be an actor. I wish someone just said that to me clearly, If
someone could tell me that just as a woman, navigating life in general, but also as an actor of like, look, we were saying, know your voice.
Know what it is that you stand for.
Explore
know your boundaries.
Yourself. Don't wait to be told. Oh, I mean, I remember going to an interview with an agency, a big agency one time, and she looked at me and she's like, "Oh, this is great because I don't really have anyone with your look. I think you'd be perfect to play the goth girl." And I thought, I write poetry, for God's sake. I'm not the goth girl.
Thanks.
But that told me, right? And instead of taking it as a rejection, I just took it as like, oh, okay, so we're not aligned because I was at a place in life where I was a little more mature and I was like, oh, that's not really me. And
that's what you're looking for. And I'm not going to be the one to give that.
And it's not an insult. That's what you want. That's what you're looking for. That's great.
And
I can't offer
transfer
it.
that to any relationship in life.
Yes.
Everyone is entitled to have their unique wants, their unique needs, just like a role, just like a partnership.
Not bad or wrong. Just know what you want and what you need so that you can draw on the right thing.
Could be great. The partnership could be great. But if it's not what the role that you're looking to fill, for lack of, it's just not for you. And that's okay.
Yep. And honestly, I think that, for newer generations and just beautiful, soulful conversation of truth to remember is that you have choice every step of the way, and let's say you make a decision about what you want to do today, and then, I don't know, tomorrow or like a month down the line or a year down the line, life changes and you're never the same person like minute to minute to minute than you are like a year from now. Yeah. So if that changes for you, there is no mistake. There's no loss in changing your mind.
There's no wrong path, only growth, really. Yeah.
Only growth, and I think that that's so healing to know because sometimes you got to go, 2 steps forward, 5 steps backwards in this industry, right? To create your own work, especially.
Sometimes you got to give it all, move to LA, give it a college try for 2 years, and then move back home to your parents' house, thinking the dream is done. Actually, eventually realizing you're closer than ever to being the filmmaker you always dreamed you wanted to be.
Sometimes you give it your all, and then you give it all up, and then you refine it in a different way.
Yes, and it's so beautiful. Yeah. And that's why I have so many friends, honestly, that have given up. Just given up, and that's okay too. You get fed up with constantly the up and down, the unfamiliarity, the being a chameleon, the insecurity, the where's my next paycheck coming from, right?
The rejection,
the struggle, like financing is a beast, right? Like who's going to help? Because you don't want to do this for free.
To make stuff.
Yeah. Life costs money, friends.
It's one thing to volunteer your time to do it, but it still physically costs the equipment, the people, the places.
Yes.
There's
and
only
giving
so much
the
you can give.
respect of like a decent rate to someone who even sometimes we all do favors for each other, right?
Yeah.
And it's also sometimes just as easy as acknowledging someone, where they are in their career and saying, look, I know that normally you would charge like this, but this is special to me. You're special to me. Is it possible to meet me somewhere in the middle for a local rate, but we'll help each other out and I'll give you some back end or something there's ways
exchange
of
services, essentially. Yeah. Like if I really need someone who can operate a camera and, so maybe the rate's a little bit lower, but then next time you really need an actor for something, I will make myself available and I will show up for you, right? Just that. And again, that's the importance of finding your crowd, your people who are as passionate about are as passionate as you and passionate about your success and want to see you succeed.
And we were saying from our lived experiences, not having known each other until recently, that it
feels like a lifetime.
I know, fast friends.
There are bad scenarios. There are people who are shisty. There are those things of that you do have to navigate, that you will have to navigate, and that's part of the journey. But being so clear on your boundaries, what you are open to, what you aren't open to, in order to kind of bring in the right people and make sure that you're only surrounded by the right people who want to protect and take care of you and your art and your work as much as you're hoping to kind of foster those relationships with other people.
There's always a way. I've been hit with so many roadblocks in my life, and I think that my natural optimism, as a little immigrant kid, my family and I came to Canada when I was so young, and I will never forget the feeling of being an outsider, but also the feeling of what's possible. And I embraced the unknown. It forced me to embrace the unknown, which I now realize, through a lot of therapy. And and I find that acting sometimes is therapy, right? It forces you to think about things.
Well, you explore parts of yourself that might not always feel safe,
right?
Or
that you don't give
to
permission.
Explore regularly in your everyday life. Permission is
and it's about belonging, and also it makes you so versatile, and it opens you. This optimism. This industry is all about optimism. It's How do I make this impossible project that's in my brain come to life and
pull something out of imagination and
how to make an idea a tangible thing.
And we have to realize, like, the thing that you learn when you stick with it long enough is it's a huge team sport, right? Which is why, as a feminist, I think it's important to help people and women especially, raise their voices and come up in the industry. If I can create an opportunity, that's what I'm going to do. Because if we're aligned in that way and I see the value, we're all going to rise up together.
When one rises, we all rise. And that makes,
wraps up our conversation about, like, okay, we see the struggle, or we see where the stats and the data are off. We're talking about our lived experience and what our navigation has been like. So what do we do moving forward? Because we always like to give tangible kind of steps. Like we've talked about before. Diversify your content. Look for voices that are different than your own. Actively make the effort to do that. And like you just said, if you're not even getting, given an opportunity, but you're carving one out for yourself, especially be mindful of the other voices and people and experiences that you can also bring to the table and invite those voices to the table.
And to wrap it back to the beginning, that's why it is so special when you do get the opportunity to be involved in a project like Polly's and Monogamy,
100%.
where you get to work with those other women who are passionate, who are sharing real stories of the female experience and, the female sense of comedy and what we care about and what we think and feel. That has to feel pretty special.
It honestly does. I'm so proud of my friends. I'm so proud of someone, Cat Hostick specifically, who's the creator of the show, put her own money into this, self-finance.
We know that game.
Yes!
We know that game.
I admire the strength. I admire the courage. I think it's something that we need to do more of. And sometimes you just educate yourself on the risk. And it's actually not as big of a risk when you do it the right way and ask the right questions of people who have done it. It's not as big of a risk as we think.
And when you do it with the right people.
With the right people, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, the thing that mind boggles me is it's so easy to go to the Netflix, to the MGM, oh my God, like Amazon show, whatever. It's so easy to go to those networks or to aspire towards those networks that are visible, but we so often forget the value of those who are actually on the ground floor, rising up, who will give you sweat equity. That
pouring all of their passion.
Will give and it then tenfold than someone who's, just worried about going home and
checking off boxes and doing it based just on money or making remakes, for God's sake.
Yeah. I think we live in a renaissance in our industry because we have to, because of the things that are happening in the world and all the shifts that we've experienced. The landscape is fundamentally different moving forward. Yeah. Woohoo! Oh my God!
We knew it was going to happen.
We were worried about this before we started.
You know what? This is amazing though, because this is a sign. I actually took that as everything's shifting. The landscape
is shifting. Yes,
right? My whole body.
The earth is moving around us.
We are shifting it. We're magical.
We are. We're going.
We're alchemists. Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's not a mistake that we are meeting each other in this time, in this way, that we are, talking about things that need to be spoken about in a time of transition. And, one of my favorite sayings is, like, when everything's uncertain, anything is possible.
Yeah.
Oh, love that. Yeah.
And I remind myself of that constantly because it's kind of scary. I'm not going to lie, and I don't want to be an alarmist, but I'm looking at the news and I don't like what I'm seeing. And there's a lot of conflict, and the world is a hot, hot, hot space right now. And so many people are angry, and so many people are hurting and losing things. And I am affected by that as an empath, like as a woman with a heart, like I feel bad for those people. But I also think, okay, it's not all bad. When everything is changing and when things are going down, when there's a down market, you gotta buy. And what you buy is like the value, the true value of someone is what we need to start paying attention to.
The value of
human beings, life, values, integrity, honesty, right? Hard work. These things aren't going anywhere.
Use these things as a catalyst to recognize that change does need to happen, and we can all be a part of it.
Yeah.
By having conversations, by sharing resources.
And like no way, no step is too small. Like it just start taking the steps, start sharing, start working. I mean, hopefully we'll have a project where the three of us come together and bring out creativity and resources. And also mentorship is a big one too. I think resource sharing, be unafraid to this podcast is resource sharing. We're actively on a quest to learn more and to be digging deeper and to find more facts. And then we want to share it in hopes that it inspires other people to also be broadening our horizons so we can build a better world.
I think you guys are amazing. I'm so inspired by what you're doing.
Oh,
honestly.
gotcha.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You're pretty
and-
incredible yourself.
I think
And
there's
working together,
Yes.
you know what I mean? There's such power in synergy and in
find your
like-minded-
people.
Find your people.
Find your people, make art together, change the world. Art can change the world. You found yours and you're making art together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. And so my husband and I talk about this all the time, right? Like you have to support each other, and support is not just financial or like you know. There's so much more, and giving above and beyond pays off.
You know what? Your husband, I think, was the first one. Well, there wasn't really very many people, but who reached out to us after he saw us complete our directorial debut feature film that we funded ourselves, and we were, you know, did a little campaign to do our own red carpet and to like do what we could with it. and get
to acknowledge and
distribution.
say, I think what you're doing is really exciting.
Someone who
And keep at it.
And we hadn't spoken in years. We haven't lived in Toronto in years, and we didn't even know him that well at the time, but we knew of the same people. And for him to reach out and be like, hey, I see what you're doing.
I see
You're
you.
doing
Keep
good.
going.
He's
going.
so good, honestly, and I think that's the thing that I want through osmosis to support him and wholeheartedly. Like he is such a champion of good people and community. He wants everyone to do well, and it just literally my heart just burst when you said to hear you say that, because I know he does that, and not just for me, and it's so beautiful.
And it goes back to what we're talking about, right? Like be clear about your boundaries, clear about your intentions, and look for people who align with that. We obviously noted that about each other a long time ago, even though we're removed.
Well, look for
He
people,
brought
but
us
also
in
trust
here.
that if you are living authentically, the right people will be drawn to you
Yeah.
too,
And
right?
so all four of us within our knowing, not knowing, meeting kind of thing, it's like it's the same kind of people coming.
We're
to
in
the
the same
table.
orbit this time. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of takeaways from today and great conversation. And if you can just remind everyone again what your show is called and where they can watch it. It's very funny. Me and Chris are already hooked. A lot of lady comedy and a lot of just relational and personal comedy in general. Very relatable.
Yeah, I was gonna say my favorite part, but I won't give it away.
You don't want to give it
involves
away.
a dog, and I'm like, yes, this has happened to me. This has happened to
lady
me
comedy.
in my life.
Yes.
Thank you, someone, for writing this in. This is honest.
Yes.
This is real. But I won't say it.
Chef's kiss to the tampon moment.
Yeah.
Whoops! I just
It involves
the dog. She said
it
dog.
involves
I
a
said
tampon and a dog, and it doesn't get more real. than
If
this.
that doesn't lure you in, I don't know what will.
yeah.
Where can they watch it?
Absolutely. Well, I definitely hope you're watching it now. It's on Hollywood Suite. It's Polly's New Monogamy is a 6-part episodic on Hollywood Suite in Canada and on Tubi in the States.
Amazing.
And it might actually be available on Tubi in Canada later this year as well. So.
Oh, amazing.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
And give us a final shout out of you and your husband's beautiful work.
Yeah, so Dr. Awesome Woman Saga, A Hero's Journey is going to be available May 20th through Vortex Comics. It's a
Amazing.
special first and second edition, so really fun. But we're working on 12 issues total that will soon become a graphic novel. So we're
Great.
deep in the trenches of the actual.
stuff. Keep creating.
Creating worlds over here.
And thanks for joining us.
What
today.
a delight. Thank you for having me. You're both epically awesome.
Join-
Epically awesome is the best
I was
way.
like, what? Where did she say that?
Us?
It's so loud. Well, like we said, like draws like, right? So
Yeah. Right back at
I
you.
appreciate
sister.
we're drawing the right people in. Thank you for being in our orbit with your
Absolute
awesomeness.
pleasure.
And everyone
many
listening,
more.
we're drawing you in and keep drawing more in. And we'll just continue building beautiful lady love tribes.
Excellent.
And take over the world.
Let's do it. I'm conscious of it. I'm in. Let's
All right.
go.
Until next time.
You've been listening to The Sister Strain. If you've got something you'd like to share with us, reach out to us. Contact@sisterstrain.com. Yours in sistership, The Sister Strain.